My name is Dr. Michael Brown, and this is 3 Words, a bite-sized podcast about the strategic and significant choices that all of us can make in order to become the very best version of ourselves. And speaking of the best version of ourselves, today I have in the studio Finn Hogan, and we actually talk about this idea of how do we become the best version of ourselves before we try to brand the best version of ourselves. So the conversation today is around building your brand, and I would encourage you to listen in. Well, my friend, this is a rare occasion when I actually get to have one of my college students here in the 3 Words podcast studio. So Finn Hogan, I am so excited to have you in this space to talk about something that connects with your generation, but it also connects with my generation. It connects with the personal dimension of life, but it also connects with the professional dimension of life. So we'll get there in a moment. But first time on 3 Words podcast. So
yes.
No one knows who you are. Yeah. They're going to recognize you most likely, though, for some of the people who chime in, because they're like, I know Finn Hogan from all the various places where you appear. But all that to say, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, I play football here at Bowling Green State. I've been here for 2 years now. So I transferred in from Central Michigan and stuff like that. So it's been the best decision I could have possibly made. I play football, receiver, and tight end, and then I also make content online and stuff like that. A lot of it sports comedy related, but starting to branch off into lifestyle content. And so, yeah, me and DMB became good friends and stuff like that when I got here. Went and got some dinners, had some good conversations and stuff like that. So he invited me on the podcast, and there was no shot I was turning it down. So I'm super excited to be here.
Oh, Finn, it's great to be with you. So obviously we become friends through kind of our mentoring relationship as I serve as the life and performance coach for Bowling Green State University Athletics. And obviously this conversation is not about athletics, but there'll probably be some tie-ins at some point in time. Mm-hmm. But would you be so kind and to have the honors to introduce to our viewers and listeners our 3 words for today?
Our 3 words are build your brand.
Now, interestingly, we've talked a little bit about this offline, but your generation, my friend, your generation is way into this idea. How do I build my brand? Help me build my brand. I want the perfect brand. I want people to see me a certain way. Various things. And I have some thoughts about that. But even before I go there, why is this idea of building your brand so important to you?
Yeah, I think social media is a huge piece of our generation, as you kind of just mentioned there. And so I think it's a huge thing you see growing up and stuff like that. You see these people creating videos, and it's a constant thing that's on everybody's phones and cellular devices and stuff like that. So as you grow up, I think people see this idea and like they envision themselves doing it as well. So I think that's how it's kind of grown to be such a big thing. For me personally, I got to college in 2021, and that was the year NIL, so name, image, and likeness, which allowed college athletes to make money, got legalized. So we were kind of like, why not take this opportunity and try and build our own kind of thing? So we started making content, things like that. Sports related comedy is kind of what we started with. And there was no, design or anything too. It was just kind of when we wanted to do it, we did it. And it just kind of took off and continued to build and stuff like that. So as it's kind of progressed, we've taken it more serious and stuff like that. And just the opportunities that it opens up have been incredible. So
yeah. So it is important to you personally. It's obviously something that you spend a lot of time doing. In fact, we were talking today a little off camera. You've actually, as of today, had an onboarding conversation with a talent agency that reached out to you because you're like, as you learned about kind of our brand, the DMB coaching brand, and we were kind of talking about, and I was showing you the studios and we've had some of these conversations, you were like, how do you do all that? How do you keep posting? I was like, I have a team. The primary leader of that team is my very own son, Logan Brown, who does this professionally, but then also volunteers his time to be able to help us kind of build our brand. But it's interesting. You're like, I need help because it takes a lot of work.
No, you're right. I think since I've started it, I've always done it myself, and people have reached out to help out and offered and kind of thing. And I've always just, I'm going to do it myself. So I can control everything like that. And now we've hit a point where there's a lot to do and there's a lot to control, and having all that on your shoulders is a lot, especially when you're a college athlete, you're going to college, taking classes, things like that. It just becomes a lot. So I finally made the decision to, reach out to some companies that have reached out in the past and just open up for some help and things like that, which something I mentioned to you earlier too, that I think is a big reason that I'm looking to do this is like relationship building and the connections that those kind of companies have when it's like coming to events or, you know, meeting people is huge, where like me by myself, I don't necessarily know those kinds of people or have the connections. So the ability just to get out in front of more people and meet people like this, do opportunities like this is huge with those guys, and they can help a lot with that. And I think that's a big part of, you know, building your brand.
Well, and if I may, the fact that people are reaching out to you, Finn, the fact that people are seeing your talent. And I mean, again, I follow you on Instagram. I crack up because it's funny. You're doing sports things, you're doing comedy things, but then there's also that side of you that I know you. So I'm like, yeah, this is authentically Finn. Because again, when you think about building your brand, and I think this is an important conversation for our listeners and viewers who are interested in building their brand, to build your brand, you need to have a unique kind of identity
100%.
That is truly authentically you. You need to be able to talk about what you stand for and then also what value you bring. So I'm guessing as people have gotten to know you and have kind of seen what you stand for, enjoy the content. Obviously, you have great talent and personality and charisma as people who follow you know. But my biggest encouragement to you, and I'm going to say to you what I've said to you even over dinner, and I'm going to say it to you, and I'm going to say it to your entire generation. Because I work on a college campus. I work with young entrepreneurs all over the country. And I think one of the traps is people are trying to build their brand before they become the guy.
I agree.
So it's like, I want to build this brand of who I want to be viewed as and how I want to be perceived and how I am, how people, they like this about me and this about me. But what happens is there's a trap because we oftentimes then begin to build a brand that is more of a mask. It is more of a facade that actually is a reflection of our true selves. And so even for us as D&B Coaching, obviously we launched D&B Coaching, I think probably 12 years ago. 3 Words Podcast came thereafter. We have a certain brand. We have certain logos. We have certain kind of messaging. We have things that we talk about a lot, the 12 dimensions of life, the 8 essentials to success. We don't want people just to be living. We want them to be fully alive. There's certain themes that you're going to keep hearing. Obviously, this, as we sit here today, is the 200th, my friend, the 200th episode of 3 Words Podcast as it drops.
I saw a statistic that I think 80% of podcasts don't get past episode 7. So you guys have blown that one out of the
Here
water.
we go. We've created the content. But when I mention it, only not, obviously, I don't do that to brag, but to say, if you listen to the various podcasts, we have a certain brand. There's a certain kind of messaging. There's certain topics and themes that we feel passionate about that bleed and move their way through our conversations, which is a part of our brand. But for you, obviously your brand, and we're going to talk more about that, I just want to make sure I encourage you, and to those who admire you and are listening to you, to build a brand as a reflection of your true self. That I want, my friend, your public persona to be an accurate reflection of your personal reality. 100%. And that there's this authenticity that you have. And again, I know you, and had I not known you, I probably wouldn't have you on here talking about your brand, because you are the same guy behind the camera that you are in front of the camera, which is just a blast for me to become your friend. So I'm going to pause right now in my conversation with my good friend Finn and simply acknowledge that if this is interesting to you, this conversation of brand building, and you might have a friend or a family member who's like, man, they're trying to build their brand too, share this episode with them. Now back to the conversation.
Yeah, I think a big thing that you just brought up too is finding something you're passionate about. I think a lot of people, like I mentioned, like you see it constantly on your screen and you see people doing what they like and enjoy, and you come up with this idea that like you have to do that as well. And I think that's something that a lot of kids struggle with, is like just following footsteps, and everybody wants to be like that person, when realistically, like, be yourself. Like, I think the best thing you can do is be yourself. And I think if people will love that. And you kind of talk about consistency and stuff like that. 200 episodes is unbelievable. And I think a lot of people, especially in today's day, expect like instant success and things to just take off. And I think consistency is a huge thing. For me at least, like posting videos, not every video is going to do great. Like, you got to have an understanding of that. And you got to keep continuing to believe in what you're doing and enjoy it. Like, if you're not enjoying what you're doing or the content you're making, then like, why are you doing it? I say the same thing for football. I think if you hit a point at a school like I did, I think where you wake up in the morning and you're not excited to go play football, or you're not excited to go to your job or do this, do that, I think that's when, maybe it's time for a change and things like that. So I think, enjoying what you're doing, having fun is the biggest thing, and just like continue to work on it. Like, don't understand like success is not going to be the next day. Like, that's not normally how it works out. So just continuing to build on little wins here and there is a huge step.
And those who are some of our biggest brands that you follow and are familiar with, you will hear them talk about that there was a tipping point. Now, some of our companies that have amazing brands tipped very quickly, but most people take time to tip. But I like how you're making the outcome. You may not even pick this up as you're sharing with me, but I'm catching all of it. Well, one of your outcomes was, I want to build relationships.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy the thing that I'm doing. I want to be able to make my voice heard in the things that I care about. You hinted to this, and I want to hear more about it, that you want to move from sports to comedy to lifestyle. There's things you probably stand for that you want to be heard about, but never once in this whole conversation have you said, I want to make millions.
Yeah.
I want to build my brand so I can make millions. And I'm guessing you wouldn't be opposed to making millions.
Wouldn't turn it down, no.
No one is opposed to making millions, but when you make the goal money or this like success that's outside of authentic relationships, being myself, making the world a better place, really adding value, because that's what building brand is. And I mentioned them already, but I want to hear from you just so people can get to know you a little bit, Finn, because I think you're fantastic, is what is true about Finn Hogan that you're like, this is uniquely me? Secondly, what do you stand for? And thirdly, how do you feel like you add value? So if just briefly, I just, because I think people will just enjoy hearing the person behind the brand. What are something unique about Finn Hogan that makes you you?
Yeah, I think a big piece of my identity as on social media and things like that is football. And I post a lot about it and things like that. But as you mentioned, I, like everybody else, have a lot of other interests in things like that. So my big goal for the 2025 year is to, kind of branch out and show more of me. I want like my listeners and followers to connect more with my voice and hear me speak about my life, things I'm passionate about. So that's a big piece for me, branching out into lifestyle content, building more of a relationship with the audience. And I think that's a huge aspect for like that growth.
Well, and you said what makes you you and what you care about. So let's talk about core values. What are some of the core values you have? You're like, man, I want to, because football is not a core value,
no.
But I'm guessing hard work is.
100%.
So what are the core values that are true of Finn that you're hoping then will be a part of your brand?
Two big ones that I give all the credit to my parents on these ones. Kindness is a huge thing. I think we live in a world right now where kindness isn't a big thing, and you're either on one side or you're on the other. And if it's an opposing side, then you're wrong and there's no middle ground. And I don't think that's how it should be. I don't think that's how it's been in the past. And I think it's important for people to, understand that like, if we want to, continue to grow as a society and develop, you got to learn to work together. And I think being kind to each other has kind of gotten thrown on the back burner and people kind of forget about, but just like saying hi, being able to strike up a conversation with people, check in on them. It goes so much farther than you could ever imagine. You don't know what people are going through. So I think a big one is kindness. Another one for me is hard work, like you just mentioned. I think we also live in a time now where you see social media and there are negative effects of social media. I think people look at it and they see the successes of other people and they feel like they are owed something, or like this person's getting this, why like am I not getting it? And they, like I said, assume things like just to happen like that, like, oh, I did this one time, like why is it not working out the same way as me? And I think like consistency is a huge thing. Like if you want something to happen, I fully believe if you put in the work and effort, like you can make that happen. But I think a lot of people aren't willing to these days, and they kind of give up so quickly on themselves.
Right. That's right.
And I think, the ability of self-confidence, believing in yourself and like who you are as a person, understanding like your worth and what you bring to the table is huge. So just, hard work and kindness, I think, are the two biggest things that drive me and, continue. I try to show through dailies.
I feel like you've been listening to my podcast because I care about these things too. They're all over the place. I was thinking about find common ground.
Yeah.
We talk 100%. A lot about this. Compassion changes everything.
Yeah.
Do it now. Well, there's a lot about hard work and so forth, but in generosity and being, we do a ton of work around identity because again, as you probably know, as an athlete, and I've said this to you personally, I want your sport to be your passion without it being your person. Mm-hmm. And when you make your identity things that are fleeting and are temporary, then we get into some problems. Agreed. And so I love this idea about identity and hard work. You're giving the audience obviously as well some insights into your personal core values. But you've also used the phrase consistency a lot. And that's actually a big piece. And so whether you are a young person building a brand for yourself like Finn is, or if you're listening in today and you're wanting to build the brand of your business, it is consistent. Building a brand requires consistency, slow choices, and steady. The same choices over and over. Keep posting, keep building, keep doing outreach, keep doing marketing, whatever that brand is. But also with that is assumed, maybe, but maybe not, patience. Because it is consistency, but then patience and persistence are the fuel for that consistency, because the results typically don't come as fast as we like. Now, what's interesting, we all can think of that one example though. Well, that one person overnight. Yeah. So then I was like, and then what happens is we want to achieve what other people have achieved without doing what other people have done, which is typically the hard work of consistency and persistence and so forth. So I'm curious, as you talk to your generation, as I talk to my generation, any tips beyond what we've already talked about in regards to building your brand?
Yeah. Like I said, I think the biggest thing is be yourself. Don't try and be somebody else. Like, find something that you're passionate about, that you enjoy doing. When you wake up in the morning, you're like, gosh, like this is what I want to do today. I think that's a huge thing to success, happiness. Just be yourself. Enjoy what you're doing. It's a wonderful life, and I think we focus on the negative a little too much. So enjoy the positives. Look for opportunities to grow, relationships, meet people, get outside, talk. There's so much out there. So yeah, just continue to strive to be great.
And I would just add to that, through kind of for my generation and through the professional lens, is don't try to present yourself in a way that isn't authentic and isn't accurate. To actually become the company, become the organization, become the guy, become the gal, become the human first, and then actually step into those different spaces where you can actually, your brand isn't even your branding yourself. You're not even building your brand. You simply are taking a spotlight and putting it on the thing that is authentically you already. So, Finn, it's so great to have you in the studio. I may have you back at some point in time down the road when you have kind of started some of these lifestyle things and our core values continue to grow in sync and side by side with each other. And it's a pleasure being your mentor, pleasure being your friend. Thanks for being with us today.
Had a great time. Thank you.
As the host of 3 Words Podcast, can I just thank you for being with us today and even being on this journey with us? I wanted to also invite you to visit dmbcoaching.com/subscribe and subscribe to our newsletter. Every month or so, we send out a newsletter that kind of enhances some of the conversations we're having, goes deeper into some of these conversations that I'm having, even as I did with today with Finn. And we just love being on this journey with you. That said, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.